Well, welcome Mike Kelly to our interview series of our endorsed candidates for the Spokane GOP. Congratulations on your endorsement from our PCOs, and we're excited to
Thank,
have you with us today.
well, thank you, MJ. It's exciting to be here, and I really appreciate all the effort the PCOs have put into the process and getting us to this point.
Yeah, it's an awesome feat what our PCOs do in our community, and I know they appreciate you running for this position. So we're doing this interview series to help our constituents get to know you so that they have an educated opportunity to on who they're voting for. And so that's why we're doing this today. So Mike, tell us about yourself, your background, and why you are running for the Senate position in Legislative District 4.
Well, so I've always had a great interest in politics and including local politics because I believe it's important that as citizens we be engaged and informed. And I think, like most people, over the last decade or so, I've kind of had some concerns growing about the direction that our country is headed. But my background is I'm essentially a businessman. I've been the controller and CFO of a company that does contracting on public transportation projects for the last 27 years. And so I've worked in the like I said, public contracting and come into contact with government in that arena. And throughout that time, I've also had the opportunity to become a landlord, both commercial and residential real estate. And I've owned a number of businesses through efforts that I've made with a partner of mine to invest in businesses and help them either turn themselves around or just purchase them outright and kind of improve them. So had experience with a salon and day spa. I've owned an insurance agency, a trucking outfit, a real estate investment firm, and a diesel repair, heavy engine repair shop. So I've come into contact or viewed government from a number of different perspectives, and so I feel I have a broad understanding of how government works and the interactions that both business people and citizens have. I've also married for 18 years. I have 6 grandchildren, and 4 of them live in Liberty Lake. So I'm obviously concerned about their education and their future. And so, just in general, I have a lot of interest in our community policies and how things develop. And I got involved in the race mostly through invitation from Senator Patton from some mutual acquaintances that felt the people that felt like he and I shared similar values. And so we sat down and talked, and he agreed that I had shared some values that he had, that I'd be strong in representing those values, and that I also would work well in the culture of the Washington State Senate. So he asked that if I would run, that he said that he would support me. So that's how it's worked out. And we got into this point, and I've had a blast doing it, getting out and knocking on doors and meeting people. That's been the best part.
That's awesome. And I know Senator Patton, that's a huge endorsement, a huge vote of confidence. He's been a great senator for us in the 4th legislative district. So that's very notable. And Mike, you have an interesting background. If you might, take the opportunity to share. I know some people have heard maybe or maybe seen that, you don't have a perfect background, which of course a lot of people like me appreciate because you've been through the ringer a bit. So would you share with people a little bit about some things that happened in your past?
Absolutely. Yeah. So after attending a couple years of college, I got out and always had an interest in the financial field. So I got a stockbroker's license and insurance licenses and went to work as a financial planner, investment counselor. And but I was quite young, and so I spent a couple years doing that and struggling because basically those people who had money were old and older and didn't really feel like I had a lot to offer. And of course, anyone who would listen to me didn't seem to have any money. So after struggling for a few years, and I wound up kind of gravitating into some things that were probably not smart. And this was, I should say, by the way, this is the late 1980s. And it was a time of Miami Vice and Scarface. And so I mean, drugs, particularly cocaine, was kind of part of the culture at the time. And so I was, while I didn't partake myself, I was certainly exposed to it. And so through some opportunities that just kind of fell my way, I wound up financing some narcotics transactions. And after a period of time, found myself arrested. And because of the war on drugs and the seriousness at the time of what the federal government was trying to do, the U.S. Attorney's Office picked up my case and decided to prosecute. So I took responsibility for my actions and I did plead guilty and I did find myself incarcerated. After a couple of years of getting kind of stabilized, I decided that I would make the best use of my time that I could. And one of those things that I did was getting familiar with the federal criminal code. So every U.S. prison or Bureau, it's the Bureau of Prisons, the U.S. Bureau of Prisons, they have a law library available so that people have the ability to understand their case and defend themselves. And so I was there mainly to just kind of get familiar out of curiosity, but also to help other people who maybe weren't able to understand as well as I might be what their cases, what was going on with their cases. But through that process, what I found out or what I determined is that there was some very serious mistakes made in my case. And what essentially what it boiled down to is that I had been charged with a misdemeanor, but I had been sentenced for a felony. So I was able to approach the court through a motion and just ask that my sentence be corrected. And that initiated a process that over a period of time and through some negotiating with the government, managed to get me out of prison in a much shorter period of time than I was otherwise going to be released. So the thing that I basically learned from it, well, I mean, I learned a lot of things, but basically that accountability is an important thing because I was held accountable for my actions, but also that there's opportunities for redemption. And so I consider myself having been blessed with that and completely changed my outlook on life. I was humbled, I was strengthened, and I gained a greater appreciation for all the things that we cherish, which is, our ability to our freedom and our ability to just kind of live our lives the way we want. So, and I also gained an appreciation for other people. I mean, I saw a lot of very intelligent people that were incarcerated and a lot of people that struggled. And so I kind of learned that we're all just human beings trying to live our lives and do the best that we can. And some people have burdens that are larger than others, but we kind of all share a responsibility to help one another when possible.
Yeah, that's a powerful story. Thanks for sharing with us. And I think that's such an important part of who you are and who makes you who you are. You have the compassion that comes across because you've been there and you haven't had everything just handed to you on a silver platter. You've kind of been tried by fire. So again, thank you for sharing that with us and with the constituents, because I think that makes you a stronger candidate, honestly. And you understand the system. You've been inside of it in those different ways. So Mike, why should citizens vote for you over your opponents that are running?
Well, I'm familiar with my opponents, and I believe that they all have their strengths and weaknesses. But I can tell you, for myself, I mean, I'm first off, I have the ability to understand complex issues. I mean, I've been dealing with, business contracts and other similar things, solving problems in businesses for the last 30 years, and so I feel like I have the ability to understand these things, to get down and to research them if necessary. I also feel like I have the ability to communicate with others and bring solutions to the table and advocate for them. And I also know that I have a passion for this country and for the constitutional values that have served us well for the last 248 years. And so I really want to be a legislature who views everything that we do through the lens of constitutionality and through public service, so that whatever we do is actually benefiting the public, and that those people that are any changes or legislation will impact have been brought to the table and have had input, and that we know that there's actually a problem to be solved, and that the solution that we're proposing or going to implement will be the correct one based on the input from those people that it will impact. And so I know that I can be the most vocal and energetic advocate for the people in the Fourth and for Eastern Washington in general, as opposed to the ideas or the solutions that may be more appropriate for the West Side.
Yeah. Yeah. And you've been out there talking to people. I mean, how many people do you think that you've talked to so far in your campaign?
Well, I'm probably getting close to 1,000. I mean, we visited, my team and I have visited probably about 6 to 7,000 homes, and I've knocked on a lot of doors. Many people, I mean, I've seen a lot of American flags. Many people in our community are very patriotic and they're very engaged, and they share the same concerns that you and I have. The number one thing that emerges is probably education, because we care about our children and our grandchildren, and we want to make sure that they're getting exposed to things that represent the values that we have. I think the next thing that I've heard is property taxes. I mean, just in general, taxes are going up. We know that people are living longer, and so when they retire and then their homes, the cost of maintaining those homes, and of course, property taxes continue to escalate, but their incomes don't necessarily keep up. And so after 10, 20, maybe 30 years, they're faced with having to sell their home and not have a legacy that they can pass on to their family when they go. And so they're very concerned about that. And, if they have a home in a nice area, maybe a rural, or even say up at Newman Lake or something, they want to hang on to that because that means something to them. Their family may have been there for generations. And so those are probably the top two things, of course, affordability, quality of living based on cost of living is a concern as well. But crime, homelessness, I do hear about those things. But I've talked to a number of people. They're very passionate, and I've had some great discussions. And just like I said before, it's the best part of what I'm doing, just getting out and meeting the people.
Yep, so important to talk to those people that you're, basically in an interview to serve. That's who you're going to hear it from the most. So again, thank you for doing that. Given the pervasiveness of money and lobbyists in our government, along with the strong presence of special interest groups, how do you intend to effectively navigate and combat these pressures to genuinely represent and stand up for the interests of the people of the 4th Legislative District in Olympia? Basically, we know there's a lot of pressure to go along to get along there. So how are you going to combat those pressures?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing I'd say is since I'm running for the Washington Senate, the Senate tends to work a little more autonomously and not really be sort of caucus driven. Of course, we do share values and we want to cooperate, but you do have some more freedom to make some independent decisions. The second thing is I do come in as sort of an outsider. I mean, I haven't held an elected position before other than precinct committee officer, and that only took my vote to get me there. But from the standpoint of the lobbyists, I mean, I've been meeting with them, and I've already and had conversations because they're interested in knowing who they want to endorse. And I know I haven't won a lot of endorsements because I've asked some hard, difficult questions. And so, I mean, I'm getting back to, my prior answer, which is, I mean, my focus is on having solutions that are appropriate for the citizens. And I see a lot of these corporations and a lot of these lobbyists, they kind of see the writing on the wall, maybe because the West Side controls a great deal of what happens in the legislature. And so they get in there and they try to cut the best deal that they can. I, on the other hand, would again am looking to advocate for the people. So I would be pushing back. I would be working hard to provide some alternate solutions that are more appropriate and advocating for those and having some difficult discussions both with other legislators and with the lobbyists and just say, well, first off, you perceive a problem. Is it really a problem? Second off, that you have proposed a solution. Why do you feel it's the best solution? And show me your evidence. And so I feel that's going to lead to some deep discussions, which people will either reveal that they, just don't really care about the evidence and they're just ideologues, or they're going to have to really think about solutions, and they can either convince me that it's the right thing, or we can have a discussion where I can convince them that maybe there's a better solution as well. And working with other organizations like the Family Policy Institute of Washington and the efforts that they're making to have voters, basically at the other end of a text where we can have the legislature hear from us and bring pressure to them when they're if they have bad ideas that are proposed. I think that between me working inside the legislature and other organizations working outside the legislature, we can bring pressure to bear on any rational, reasonable legislator to do the right thing.
Yeah, I agree. And we want to be partners with that as well, and work with our representatives to help with that, with our PCOs and with our constituents here in Spokane, right? So we look forward to having that opportunity to do that with you. So this is kind of back on people's minds with some information coming out about the potential of a bird flu epidemic happening, given the challenges and controversies surrounding COVID-19 mandates, what specific steps would you advocate for at the state level to balance the public health interests with individual liberties? And how would you work to prevent the overreaching use of mandates for measures such as masking and vaccinations in future public health crises like what we saw in 2020, 2021?
Yeah, well, I think the good news is that having gone through it recently, I think the public in general is more aware that perhaps there was quite a bit of overreach, and I don't want to say overreacted, but we certainly let that go on far too long. So, I mean, the first thing I would want to do is I would want to amend the governor's emergency powers. I just don't think that there should be a perpetual ability of the governor to just dictate what goes on. I think also the legislature would naturally is going to be a little bit more cautious or a little bit more prudent in the types of things that they would implement. And I think there's also, it would be easier for us to organize as individuals and the public to let the legislature know that we don't agree. And I think there's going to be it's going to be a little bit easier to stand up for individual rights than maybe it was the first time around. I think that we shouldn't wait, though, for another crisis to have that discussion. I think we should look at it ahead of time and say, okay, well, what are the current plans? What would be the steps that the government plan on taking? And then I think we need to look at those and modify them as appropriate to give people greater freedom. So I think people should be able to attend religious services as they want. I think people should be able to go and get medical attention if they want. And we just need to give people the ability to make better decisions for themselves than we did the last time around.
Yeah, I think that's a great start to amend those emergency powers. I believe our governor had, the emergency for 943 days or something, the longest in the nation. And it was really sad because during that businesses, there were winners and losers picked in businesses. The impact not to just people's health and livelihoods, but also, their businesses, our children with education. It was far reaching, unfortunately. So I think that's definitely on people's minds. How do you plan to address the most pressing issues facing our constituents? And you named a number of those, so you can talk about those more if you'd like to. Also, illegal immigration is at the top of people's minds, cost of living, inflation, you said taxes, crime, and of course, education. What are the things that you want to do your first 90 days as a senator?
Well, so there's some legislation that's kind of that wasn't completed by Senator Patton. So I think in the first 90 days, I would probably be advocating for some of the things that are non-controversial, and through that process, building some relationships with the other legislators, the other senators in the Senate, getting the lay of the land, understanding who I can work with, and just through those, like I said, non-controversial topics, bringing benefits back to the fourth ledge. There's some transportation projects that we're looking at and things like that. But also be working with the outside organizations to look at some of these higher profile issues. So you mentioned several. I think the number one, again, is education. I'd like the school boards to get as much of their power back that's been taken from them. And really, I should say that that's kind of been the theme of my entire campaign, is bringing back local control. As I sit on the Spokane Valley Planning Commission, I see the mandates that come from Olympia as it pertains to our community growth and development, and I think they're intentionally trying to render our city councils, our planning commissions, and our school boards kind of irrelevant, because they know that those people in those communities have sort of woken up and are trying to take back control of those things. So they want to remove as much ability for us to determine our own fate as possible. So again, I'd like to start with the school boards and see that they have the ability to determine curriculum, and that they have the ability, parental notification, parental rights. We probably need to strengthen that and make sure that it's enforced, because as you know, the Office of the State Public Instruction, the superintendent there at the state level has decided that's not something they're going to enforce. So we need to bring pressure to that and make sure that the will of the people is honored by Olympia. but also working and collaborating with organizations within the community to help solve some of these problems. I mean, crime and homelessness go together. We need to, we've also managed to make crime a little bit illegal again by giving our police officers the ability to pursue criminals. But I'd like to make sure that they know that we're going to continue to strengthen those and kind of get back to where crime is illegal again. And that way, by holding people accountable, back to the accountability, but also providing them a path to redemption, as I was offered, or as that I was able to take advantage of, that we can give some of these homeless individuals an opportunity to make meaningful changes in their lives, and not just subsidizing their existence. And I know that there's lots of community organizations that are involved in that. I've had conversations with a few, and many of them feel the way I do, that there needs to be accountability as part of the process. And so there's plenty of money for that. We just need the will to make it happen, and working with both Spokane and Spokane Valley and other institutions in the area. With regards to things like taxes and the cost of living, I mean, what we can try to do is hopefully we're gonna get rid of the Climate Commitment Act in November, because that's obviously costing us about 60, 70 cents per gallon more in Washington than in Idaho for our gas. And we're not going to be able to keep that money here as long as that disparity exists. So we need to deal with that. Hopefully that'll happen November. But I know there's other things that that are in the wings to be proposed that could probably have the same impact. So fortunately, we still have the initiative process. I believe in that strongly, because that's where the people still retain the power. And so I'd certainly support and advocate for anything that the people are strongly in favor of that would help in that arena. But just to continue to push back would be something else that I would do, is push back against any additional legislation that's going to continue to increase this cost of living. Unfortunately, we don't have a whole lot of control over what happens at the border, but we can try to advocate for not being a sanctuary state, and making sure that those people who break the law and that are not here legally are deported, and that they're no longer a threat to our community.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Uh, in Olympia, unfortunately, as Republicans, we've had the minority for quite a while. And how do you plan to leverage that situation to be able to get things accomplished? What's your strategy and thoughts around that going into this?
Yeah, well, the good news is that the legislators from Eastern Washington in all the districts here, the 6th, the 3rd, the 9th, the 7th, and the 4th, they do work closely together, and so there's a good coalition there, and each of them seem to have kind of a specialty at maybe an issue that they're passionate about, and so they come up with solutions. So I would continue to be a part of that, and work together to make sure that we stand firm against things that are not beneficial to Eastern Washington. The other thing is we're building relationships with all the senators, including those that are on the other side of the aisle, and finding that common ground. But mainly, I think by appealing to the people. So again, working with the organizations that are organizing the voters, and trying to make sure that there's a clear line of communication. I'd be a part of that to make sure that information continue to get out to my constituents, either through town halls, through emails, through the precinct committee officers, through the county GOP, and anywhere else that we can connect with them, make sure that they understand what's going on, and give them some meaningful, but I guess simple understanding of the issues, and what we should be concerned about. And then by again being that kind of a little bit of a I say I want to say kind of a pain, but just being someone who's going to hold their feet to the fire, and even if I don't have control over the agenda, if we're in the minority and can't exactly dictate what goes on, I can be there to really say say, why is this a good idea, and why shouldn't we consider other options that appear to be better? And then the people can bring the pressure from the outside. And I know that there's enough reasonable legislators that I think we could prevent bad legislation and actually maybe pass some good legislation. Um, So it really just comes with being energetic and being passionate about it, because I think you can really persuade people and bring them on board if you have good ideas and that you really believe in.
Yes, persistence, right? Don't give
Good
up.
word.
And
Good word.
yes, for sure. Well, final comments that you have maybe for your constituents.
Well, first off, for anybody who's involved and everybody that's participating in the process, I just want to say thank you, because it's just so critical that we all stay engaged. It's very easy to kind of get pessimistic or to get kind of fatalistic and just say, well, my voice doesn't count. There's nothing that we can do. The die's been cast, but that's not true. Um, like I've you probably heard me say before. I mean, our duty is to act, and the results, are God's. And so, I feel for me personally, in order to be held blameless, I need to be engaged and I need to be doing all that I can do. So I would encourage them to continue to be involved. Secondly, I would try to convey the sense of urgency that I feel that there's things that need to be taken care of. I mean, we're to the point where, the Olympia is dictating our curriculum. They want to incorporate and prioritize special interests over the basics that are both distracting us, and I believe not in alignment with the values that most of our parents and grandparents have. We're also to the point where they want to, lay the foundation for banning our natural gas. They're discussing removing dams and replacing them with what I consider to be unreliable energy sources. So when we're to this point, I don't think there's any time to waste. And so I would love to be the voice of the people, to get to Olympia, to keep these things at the front of people's minds, and to do our absolute best to do what's right, to do what's fair, to do what's smart, to do what's safe, and just continue to improve instead of try to tear down our institutions.
Yeah, for sure. Finally, Mike, where can people go to engage with you and donate to your campaign?
Yeah, well, I always encourage everyone to visit my website, mikeforwa.com. So that's Mike, FORWA.com. My story is laid out there, and it's interesting. Also have more of my positions and my platform there. Also encourage people to visit my Facebook page. So it's Mike Kelly, Kelly, Mike Kelly for Washington. And if you follow that, that's a free and easy way to support me, and also be apprised of the events that I'm going to have coming up here in July before the primary. But the best way to support me is to vote in the primary. There's 6 candidates, and I'm number 5 on the list for this race, and I would encourage you to do that. The top 2 get a move on to November, so your ballots will arrive, or the ballots will arrive about July 20th, and they need to be in by August 6th. And I'd love to be one of those top 2, so I can continue to campaign, get my message out, and eventually earn the seat so I can advocate for the people of the 4th Legislative District.
Fabulous. I'm so glad you touched on the primary. It's so important, and people often overlook how important that is. This is the opportunity for you to choose the best candidates. In the general in November, you only get to choose from what has already been chosen for you. So vote in the primary. Ballots drop next week. Vote, get your ballot in, vote early. And Mike, thank you so much for spending time with us. Again, Mike Kelly, our 4th Legislative District Senate endorsed candidate for 4th LD. And we appreciate you, and we appreciate your passion and your commitment to this work.
Well, thank you, MJ. And I would add that people should also visit the Spokane County GOP website. You have some great information there, and you've also made recommendations in all the races. And so those suggestions, I'm sure, will prove helpful.
Yes, for sure. Thanks, Mike. Have a great day.
You too. Thanks again.